Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ask an Angel with Jonathan Hung. It's my pleasure to introduce Nicci Levy from Alchemy 43. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, how are you today?
Great. Thank you for
Great,
joining us.
of
So let's
course.
kick things off. Love to hear more about Alchemy 43, when it was founded, and what's the problem you're trying to solve.
Sure. So Alchemy 43 was founded at the end of 2015. We opened the
Mhm.
first location at the end of, or sorry, in 2016. And I should probably say what it is. Alchemy 43 is an aesthetics bar that specializes in cosmetic microtreatment. So we are simply put reimagining what the experience is to receive a Botox or filler treatment or anything non-invasive and aesthetic, and really taking the experience to another level in terms of elevating it to more of a self-care ritual, less of a doctor's, sort of a doctor's visit type of feeling, but still preserving and maintaining the clinical efficacy and still keeping it extremely clinically focused, but doing it in an environment that is fun, that is happy, that kind of celebrates self-care, and
Mhm.
attracting, and sort of lowering the bar, attracting a newer user and people that maybe were interested in trying these treatments but didn't necessarily know where to go to start out. So we really, pride ourselves on really attracting people to the market that maybe have not had access prior.
Got it.
So yeah,
Wonderful.
started the company in 2015, opened the first location in
Mhm.
2016. Fast forward to now, we are four locations strong between LA and New York, with a huge
Mhm.
expansion on the way. We're planning to open six new locations this year. So big growth in front of us, and really the aim and the goal is to be the market leader for place to go for these treatments nationally and potentially internationally.
Yeah, wonderful. So I know why it's called Alchemy 43, but I'd love for you to share with the guests, the rest of the audience, why and idea of this
Yeah. So
this version.
Yeah, so the name, I love the story about the name, and I think glad you asked that question. So basically, I had another name selected for the company, and I had submitted it
Mhm.
to the trademark organization, and I had already signed a lease on my first location, and I was building out the website and buying, domain
Mhm.
names and everything, and I found out, at the 11th hour that we couldn't use the name that we initially had wanted to use, which was called Spruce. Like I
Mhm.
thought it was like a play on words, like spruce up, getting spruced up,
Mhm.
and so I was under the gun to find a new name quickly, and I had a bunch of branding people helping me. I had a list of 150 names I was kind of toying with, and nothing was kind of getting me there. And so I came home from dinner with friends one night, and I logged into Facebook, and I saw on Facebook someone had quoted the book The Alchemist, and I was like,
Mhm.
alchemy, what does that mean? And so I looked it up. I typed it into my Google browser. What is the definition of alchemy? And two definitions came up. One was a seemingly magical process of combination, creation, and transformation. And the other was the study of chemistry that predated the periodic table, that was concerned with changing base metals into gold. And I was like, this is it. This is the name.
Yeah.
And then I was talking with Shameen, who I think we both know, an early investor of
Mhm.
mine, and I was super excited to share with her, this name I'd come up with. And she said, "Well, is there any numbers that are meaningful to you? Because numbers, also have great sort of relevance when it comes to these types of brands." And I said, "Well, I don't know. 17 is my lucky number. I mean, I don't, nothing." And then she typed into her phone, "How many muscles are in the face?" And the number
Oh, wow.
43 came up. So 43 facial muscles, which is what Botox addresses and what we're addressing, simply put, with these treatments. And so that's how we came up with the name. So Alchemy 43. And
Wonderful.
yeah, thanks. And then to answer your other question about how I got the idea for this or what made me want to start it,
Mhm.
I got my start in career wise in the beauty industry. So I always worked in some form of the beauty industry, whether it was cosmetics and skincare. I had my
Mhm.
own business doing makeup for weddings, and I worked for a bunch of different brands in the cosmetic space. And then in 2009, I started working for Allergan, the maker of Botox.
Mhm.
So I actually made
Mhm.
the jump from sort of more traditional cosmetics into medical aesthetics. And my main observation, when I started selling Botox in Beverly Hills, was that these treatments were treated more like a medical procedure, and there wasn't like a lot of attention paid to the artistry behind it all, and the fact that, like,
Right.
in order to do these treatments well, there's an artistic element to it. And I just didn't feel like any of that was kind of being explored, and I thought there was really an opportunity to kind of defragment like the space.
Mhm.
Right, it was largely dominated by sort of one-off medical offices and doctors and nurses that perform these treatments. But there was not a branded experience. There wasn't that consistency around having like a go-to place. There was no one really that specialized only in this. And so I saw an opportunity to really, to kind of just reimagine the way these treatments are consumed. And that was really what sort of, was the catalyst for me for starting Alchemy 43.
Got it. Wonderful. Great. So from the beginning, I always tell, founders and entrepreneurs, a team is so important. I love to hear about, how did you build your team in the
Yeah.
beginning stages? Yeah. And where you are now.
It's a great question, and I totally think I agree with you. Team is the most critical part. And I would say for me, it was, I think in the early days, it was about sort of, I had this idea and I had this vision of what I wanted to do. I was also very aware of my blind spots and the areas that I wasn't strong as a producer, right? So,
Hmm.
I'm great at vision. I'm great at knowing what needs to happen here. But areas like, finance, and I would say, probably,
Hmm.
the medical piece, maybe the detail around the medical piece, were areas that I just didn't feel strong. So I initially built my team around immediate needs that I had. Like, I can't do this thing, so I'm going to bring in somebody that can help me do this thing. And in the early days, it was very much about hiring consultants, and I couldn't afford to, in the early days, you sort of you have to kind of wear lots of hats, and I couldn't afford to bring on like full-time CFO or any of that kind of stuff. So I outsourced a lot of it. And I sort of learned as I went along, the things that you can outsource, the things that you can't. I tried things that, and then they didn't work out. Like it was kind of trial and error, to be honest. But I think
Hmm.
what's come out of it for me is the team that I've now built, fast forward to 5 years later today. It's people that I respect and value as professionals and experts in what they do. It's people that are committed to the vision and that are super excited about what we're building and excited to have a part of it. And I would say it's people that are willing to roll their sleeves up. With a small startup company, you can't have somebody who's
Hmm.
like a siloed employee who's like, I don't
Right.
do that, I only do this. So I think it's
Right.
people that are willing to do that, and that's kind of how what the team looks like today, is people that are experts at what they do, but also willing to flex as
Hmm.
needed.
Got it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear more about what do you think you're doing that your competitors aren't?
I think that I'm thinking more holistically about the experience rather
Hmm.
than just focusing on the outcomes. Obviously,
Hmm.
outcomes are important. We want to deliver great results. We understand that there's a great amount of trust put in. I mean, I always say these are elective cosmetic procedures, but they are medical, and it is a needle in your face. And so, there's nothing, we don't take that lightly. Like, we understand that there's a lot of trust and a lot of there's a lot of fear around these treatments. And so that's very important. But I think creating a branded experience and creating something that people can count on, and if you go in and then you tell your friend about the experience and they go in, you want to make sure that experience is exactly the same each time. And so I think that something that we're doing that's really different is just being really thoughtful around delivering consistency and a really high level of customer care at each visit. It's not only about injecting your face with Botox.
Right.
It's about building a long-term relationship with the clients. These
Hmm.
treatments are all repetitive in nature, so everything that we offer, you have to keep doing if you want to keep enjoying the results. And so we obviously want you to keep doing that with us. And so we believe we have to earn that, by giving you a great experience, by treating you well. I always say to my team, like,
Yeah.
when somebody comes in, pretend like every single client that walks in the door just sat in the worst traffic to get there. They got in a fight with their partner on the way over. They tripped on the way inside. Like, assume that everybody's coming from a rough day, and treat everybody
Hmm.
like accordingly. Treat everybody really well. Like, wow, just treat
Hmm.
them, like, roll out the red carpet every time. So I think that's really important. So I think that's something we're doing that's
Yeah.
different.
Right. And I love to get your perspective now because obviously we come to this world now where like, hey, we're direct to consumer
Yep.
and we're using Facebook ads or Google or TikTok or God knows what other social media,
Yep.
but now yours is an in-person experience. It's not something you just, send to the
Click
home
to
and do
buy. Right.
yourself.
Right.
So how are you acquiring your customers? How are you finding in this digital age now with, the metaverse and everything that we're heading
Mhm.
towards, Web3 and all this? How does that affect your business where it's, you have to be more in person, you have to come to the store?
You physically have to be there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I would say we interact with the digital sort of metaverse,
Hmm.
in a lot of the similar ways at the beginning, because in order for you to be aware of us and to learn about us, and I find that today's consumer is extraordinarily savvy. They are
Hmm.
definitely doing their homework before they come in and before they and make an appointment. And so, in a lot of ways, we probably behave somewhat similar to like an e-commerce product until you where the end result of an e-commerce interaction would be you click and buy. In our world, it's you click and make an appointment to come in, right? And
Right.
so we do acquire new customers via paid ads. We do
Mhm.
Facebook and Instagram advertising. We do traditional SEM as well. And those are very, successful for us in terms of customer acquisition. But I will also say that nothing replaces word of mouth referral.
Mhm.
And of course, there's a lot of digital ways to do that, but there is literally, because these treatments are at a high price point, right? Our average ticket is
Mhm.
around $500.
Mhm.
And there's such a trust component to it. If somebody that you trust tells you, I went there and I had a great experience, it carries more weight than any paid ad ever would. And so we are very committed as a brand. Right now, we have a referral program that's kind of a manual word of mouth. If you tell a friend, you get $100 toward your next visit, and the friend also saves $100. And that's all very manual. But we are looking for ways to digitize that referral experience. And as you probably know, there's a lot of big companies out there that do that for e-commerce, but a lot of them
Mhm.
aren't equipped to do that for the service business. So we've had actually a hard
Right.
time finding a vendor to do that sort of that optimized word of mouth referral, text message, or
Mhm.
email. So, but it is something we're very focused on, because we realize that there's literally nothing that matters more. There's no more powerful acquisition tactic than word of mouth.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you, Nikki. And
Yeah.
let's switch gears for a second and talk about, at what every founder and entrepreneur loves to talk about, funding, right? It's
Raising
always
money.
an
Yeah.
issue. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, we'd love to learn about how you found your investors and also really what you're different because like, people think about tech and that's different. How you find that investor versus someone where you're saying like you're a
Yeah.
consumer, you're a service-based business.
Yeah.
It's a different conversation when you're trying
Yeah.
to find somebody to invest in you.
It really is. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I would say, I mean, I had, prior to launching Alchemy 43, I had no experience with raising capital, with speaking to
Mhm.
investors, to writing a business plan. I mean, all of it was stuff that I literally learned along the way. And I bet you if I looked at my initial
Yeah.
business plan, I mean, I built my
Mhm.
initial business plan on a website called mybusinessplanbuilder.com. Like,
Mm.
it was the most basic probably thing ever. I don't even remember what it looked like, but really for me, it was, I don't come from a rich family. I didn't have like a rich
Mhm.
uncle write me a check. I knew that if I wanted to start this business, I had to go out and find investors and raise capital. And I had no idea where to start. And so I just started with what I knew how to do. I went to an event, like a networking event in Santa Monica one night. And there
Mhm.
was a speaker who you may know. I'm always happy to say her name, Tony Coe.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Tony Coe was speaking and talking about her experience with NYX Cosmetics and having
Mhm.
sold it to L'Oreal. She mentioned during, and I loved her story. I was so just really taken by her story of how she built that company. And she
Mhm.
did mention in her interview that she was doing some investing. And I didn't know her. I had no friends who knew her or anything like that. So I sent her a cold email the next day on LinkedIn. And I just said, Hey,
Mhm.
I saw you speak last night at this event. I was really taken by your story. I have this business idea. Would you meet with me to discuss it? And she, to my surprise, she agreed. And a week later, we met for lunch at the SLS Hotel in Beverly Hills.
Mhm.
And I told her my idea. I told her about myself. She asked a lot of great questions. And by the end of lunch, she was like, "I'm in. Let's get you started. Let's get you funded." And so, really, I mean, I owe it all to her. I call her my Korean fairy godmother. Like, she's the one who gave me my start. So I think you find somebody who believes in you, and then what she did, which was great, is she introduced me to other investors that she knew that she had relationships with, and that's sort of how it went for me. People liked my idea, they liked what I was pitching, and they introduced me
Mhm.
to someone else. And I think that is how it works. And then you pitch your
Absolutely.
story to multiple people, and they collaborate, and that's sort of how it went for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
And I'd love to talk about like right now, like what would you tell like someone who's starting out? What like the best advice you ever gotten, or that after going through it, through your experience, like this would I be careful for, or watch
Yeah,
out, or not get frustrated, or to bring your vision to life because
yeah.
everyone thinks like, oh, you're an overnight success, but it only took
Right.
8 years. Yeah,
It's like there's no
not
such
the
thing, I
case.
don't think. Yeah, I think that's maybe what it looks like to people, but they don't know what
Hmm.
happened behind the scenes to get you there. So I would say it's two things that I would say. I think the first
Hmm.
thing is don't wait till it's perfect. So I think a lot of people suffer from what I call analysis paralysis. Like,
Hmm.
they get so caught up in the analytics and wanting to make sure that everything is perfectly buttoned up before they take that next step, that they never take that next step. And so
Hmm.
I really do think it's, be passionate about your vision and be passionate about what it is that you want to build, and be flexible about how you're going to get there. Because, things change, things evolve. You're going to meet people along the way that show you different paths. And, I just think if you wait until everything is fully perfect, first of all, it never is, and second of
Right.
all, you'll never get started. So I would say get your idea, get really clear on what that looks like and your vision for
Hmm.
where you want it to go, and then just get started. Like, put together a business plan as best you can, go out, start talking to people about it, get advice, run it by people that you trust. I think that's a big one. The second thing is, when you start a concept or when you have an idea, understand that nobody knows your idea. Nobody knows what you're doing better than you do. And
Hmm.
some of the things that I ran into in the early days, like I said to you earlier, like finance
Hmm.
was not an area that I felt like I was super well versed in. And so I basically found people that knew finance, and I just
Hmm.
trusted them blindly. I just listened to whatever they said about my
Right.
business, because I thought, oh, they know better than me about this topic, but they don't
Hmm.
know my business better than me. And so what I figured out early was that, ask questions. If it's something you don't know about, ask as many questions as you need to ask until you understand. There's no shame in like asking a
Yeah.
lot of questions. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to look stupid. So I just listened to them and listened to them. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? You're saying what about my business? That's not correct. So I think it's just ask questions. Don't be afraid of the things that you don't know. And nobody knows your
Hmm.
business better than you do.
Great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously we know 2020 was a challenging year, and you see the roadblocks and everything that happens.
Yeah.
How did you get through it? What did you have to do? Obviously, it shut down the stores
Yep.
for a little
Yep.
bit because we had
Yep.
no idea what was going to go through. How
Right.
did you crisis manage it? Like how going through it now, we could talk about like how did you go through that and what did you do for your team
Yeah.
and how to get through it?
I think we saw the writing on the wall. We
Hmm.
didn't know how long it was going to go on for. We didn't know how long we were going to be in that situation. To your point, we didn't
Hmm.
know how long our stores were going to be closed. So we planned for the uncertainty. So we
Hmm.
basically said, okay, we don't know how long this is going to be. It could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, it could be 2 years, right? And
Hmm.
nobody had any idea, right?
Yeah.
And I think so. What we did was we immediately kind of cocooned.
Hmm.
We said, okay, we are not going to be able to operate our stores, so we're not going to have revenue coming in. So we need to like save every dollar that we have in the bank right now. We need to not spend any money. We need to furlough all of our employees to make sure that we're able to, sustain ourselves, because we don't know how
Hmm.
long this will be. So I think we just we acted quickly, and we kind of quickly cocooned. We were lucky in that, because we're a healthcare based business, we were able to
Hmm.
reopen our locations a lot sooner than other sort of beauty service
Hmm.
businesses. That was a huge, very fortunate sort of, thing for us, because we were able to kind of continue to operate when other people could not. And that was also a win, because, they weren't able to go get their hair and their nails done, but they were able to come get their Botox. And so they were coming, and that was the one thing they knew they could do. So I think that worked out really well for us. But I would say how we navigated it was, we raised a little bit of extra capital from our investors to make sure that we were going to be able to navigate through it no matter what. We negotiated, rent discounts and rent abatements with our landlords early on, and we furloughed employees, and we just said, okay, we're going to press pause on everything until we
Hmm.
know what's going on here. And I think that's honestly what saved us. And
Hmm.
then when we started to see the writing on the wall that we were going to be able to reopen, we wanted to test our clients out and see if people were going to be actually comfortable to come in. And so we sent out something that said, hey, to all of our clients, hey, we're excited, we're going to reopen. Do you want to be added to a waiting list? What do you want to be let do you want us to let you know when we reopen? And we had a waiting list of like 700 people on each coast that wanted to get in as soon as we reopened. So we just planned well. I mean, I think we just
Hmm.
planned well, and we understood that we didn't know how long it was going to be. And so we, sort of planned around that.
No, wonderful.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, I'd love to hear your perspective versus, you are not a seed investment anymore, right? You went
Right.
through that history of like trying to find your product market fit,
Yeah.
but now, hey, now you've gotten growth money.
Yeah.
And how would you say it's different now, being the CEO of a company that's growing versus, trying to
Just getting
get
started.
started? Yeah.
It's a different conversation that you have with investors. So
Hmm.
in the early days, the conversation is really rooted around the vision.
Hmm.
What is your idea? How does it look? What, like a lot of theoreticals, right? Now we have 5 years of experience under our belt,
Yeah.
and granted, it's only in a few markets, but we know what these stores, how they operate, what they do, and so the conversation becomes much more data driven,
Yeah.
and much more about sort
Hmm.
of what we're actually seeing versus what we thought we were going to see. there's always still a component that is future oriented and where it's still going, because obviously we want to get a whole lot bigger than we are now. So I think it's a combination of things, but it definitely feels better when it's more than just an idea in your head.
Hmm.
And you actually can point to actual data points of, well, this is why we think this is what we've seen that, informs that decision or that thought. And so I would say that that's the key difference, is that it's still always about the pie in the sky, the vision of where you're
Hmm.
going, but we have a lot more data to back it up now.
Got it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And my last question, Nikki, is like, are there any books or publication or podcasts that you listen to or you try to find, motivation from to help with your team or how you manage, Alchemy
How
43
you
on a
lead.
day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, the one, and probably all founders say this, I would
Hmm.
imagine, but I love the How I Built This podcast with Guy Raz.
Hmm.
It's my dream to be on that one day. I think I will be.
Okay.
But I do just find stories of other founders and
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and how they got to where they are, so empowering. And so I
Hmm.
always find that I can take away from everyone's story like a tidbit of something that I can
Right.
do. So I get ideas from it. I get inspired by it, and it just kind of shows you that, like, anyone, if you have an idea and you're willing to put yourself out there to get it done, and other people agree that your idea is a good idea, like, you can make anything happen. And it's just
Yep.
so powerful, and I'm very inspired by those. So I would say that's my number one go-to.
Great. Wonderful. And now, Nikki, I turn it to you. Do you have any questions for
Yeah.
me that I could help or,
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, I would love
uh,
to know, because I also say, and I think a lot of founders say this too, is, I
mhm.
want to be an investor when I grow up.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot about, the investor experience now. It's like, being on
Hmm.
the other side of it, I'm like, what would I want if I was an investor, right?
Right.
So I would love to know sort of how do you make decisions about things that you're going to invest in and things you're going to pass on? Like, is there one or two things you look for in any
Hmm.
investment pitch, or what sort of drives that for you?
It depends on what hat I'm wearing. Like,
Hmm.
there's a difference between being an angel investor versus being a general partner of a fund and you have other people's money.
Right.
It's a totally different fiduciary responsibility, of course. Like, like I joke around, like, hey, I'm an Emmy winning producer, but I have no money for that. Like, I got
Right.
2 Emmys, but that was me making a decision. If I had to do that for fun, like, I'd probably be
Uh,
like, sued.
yeah. Yeah.
But there's fun projects and great projects like for something like this. Like, I thinking about this for your company. Like, I did it personally as an angel
Yeah.
investor
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
love the concept. I read about you. Shameen sent it to me as we talked
Yep.
about,
Yep.
and it was a wonderful story. And I thought, perfect. I mean, unfortunately, 2020 came along, and that like it was a little, little obstacle, but we got around
Sure.
that, and we're
Sure.
pushing forward again.
Yeah.
But when I brought it to my team for Truesdale Ventures or
Yep.
Unicorn, it was just an issue of like, hey, well, we don't space companies, which is unfortunate because like I think they're great businesses
Yeah.
personally, but it's not going to get you like the 20x return
Right.
on your money
There's a
in a
different
short
thought
period
process
of
around the
time. It
return.
takes
Yeah.
time to build up, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at that. But at the end of the day, it's still about the founder,
Yeah.
still about his or her vision and how you believe in them. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a difference, like when I asked you earlier, like a growth company versus a seed stage
Hmm.
company, it's totally different. I tell people I see myself as a high school counselor, not a college counselor, a high school counselor. I
Oh, I like
get you your
that.
Series A, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's my job. It's
Yeah.
up to the next team because, like we talked about, you're growing your team from the beginning, from 2016 till now. It's going to be totally different. It changes
Yes.
all the time.
The game
Like you
totally
might have,
changes. Yeah.
yeah, you might need a CFO or you might need
Right.
somebody with more legal expertise on your team versus just
Right.
having an outside general
Yeah.
counsel. It's
Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah.
So when I look at investments, I love looking at, hey, team. Who is
Yeah.
the team? Who is the founder? Is he or she going to get you there? Because it's all about grit. It's all about being
It
relentless.
is.
I mean, like
Yeah.
you said, like you're not going to have 99.9% accuracy when you make a decision.
No.
Like you
No.
said, you gotta fast fail things
Yeah.
and
You
go
do.
through
You
it
do.
and see what sticks and
Yeah.
that's important and that's what you
Mhm.
need to have. It's not trying to like the lie academia is like, hey, we're giving you all these scenarios and you come up with the best answer when you do a test, or no,
Yeah.
not the best answer, the answer.
The
And in
the
the
one
real
and
world,
only answer. Yeah.
yeah, we don't know. There is no one answer
Right.
to what we're
Right.
doing. So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I had years ago a founder said to me, and I totally agree. It's kind of like a game of whack-a-mole. You know that game
Mm.
of whack-a-mole where you're
Hmm.
literally
Yep.
like, okay, you solve one
Yep.
problem, the next thing comes up. What's the
Yeah.
every day? And so I truly believe like the life of an entrepreneur, and probably at any stage is like you have to be a problem solver. You have to you
Yep.
have to you have to you have to like be somebody who enjoys solving problems, because that's 90% of the journey. Is just like solve, 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 and then on to the next thing, solve, solve, solve.
Yeah, and just like being an entrepreneur and investor, it's not just a 9 to 5 job. It's
No.
not like, okay, we clock off at 5, I don't
Right.
answer any texts. Like even during this podcast now, I'm getting texts
Yeah.
from some of my entrepreneurs like, hey, I need to talk about run this idea. How would I raise money? Like who can you introduce me to right now? At
Right.
6 months of runway. It's important because we see right now what's happening in the stock market, what's happening with the
Yep.
crypto world. It's like, are we
Yep.
heading towards a recession? Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a little bump in the road, but we have to plan
Yeah.
accordingly.
Yeah. Absolutely. So agree. Yeah. I think those are the only questions I have for you.
Great.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's it. But it
Wonderful.
was, yeah.
Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. Please let everyone know where we can come and find you
Thank you so much.
here in
Yeah,
Los
so you
Angeles.
can,
Yeah,
so Alchemy 43, we have 3 locations in Los Angeles. We're in Santa Monica, West Hollywood, and Los Angeles, right near the Grove. And then we are on the Upper East Side I'm sorry, we're in Flatiron in New York City, opening a store on the Upper East Side later this year. So you can find
wonderful.
us in LA and New York, and then soon to be Texas as well. Dallas is on the
Um,
docket this year too. So look
hey,
for us. We'd love to see you, and we have all kinds of great new client offers. So give us a try.
wonderful.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for the
much.
shameless plug.
Yeah, of course. We have to.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you,
having me,
Nikki.
Jonathan. Thanks for believing in me and being a great
Of
investor.
course.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.